This is the story of two best friends, Alistar and Maggery, who hates each other but are loved by the villagers for their charming personalities. But what the dumb villagers didn't know was that behind those innocent faces of theirs are two shameless fraudsters, fooling everyone around them. Alistar, for one, is seen as a sweet, kind guy, while Maggery is seen as a fashionable, beautiful, and book-loving girl. But in truth, Alistar is nothing but a disgusting junkie whose life goal is to find a rich sugar mummy to leech off, while Maggery is a squishy gold digger also searching for a rich sugar papa to milk dry. They are two birds of a feather, disguising their filthy personalities in the village until they finally hit the jackpot. So one day, while sitting under a tree at the outskirts of the village, strategizing on how to achieve their greedy goals, they see some knights from afar storming into the village. The leader of the knights, a clapped face named Helge, demands to see Maggery, claiming she has been chosen as a saintess and must report to the capital immediately. But when Alistar and Maggery return to the village to hear the news, Alistar cannot believe that Maggery, of all people, has been appointed saintess. For Maggery, however, being a saintess is the last thing she wants. That role would put her in the spotlight and force her to live righteously, which would make her sugar daddy ambition impossible to achieve. But Alistar sees this as the perfect opportunity to make the one person who knows too well that he is just a disgusting scum disappear. So as he starts shouting that Maggery is an angel and is perfect for the role, Maggery's blood boils with anger. Figuring that his plan is to get rid of her, Maggery starts shedding crocodile tears, insisting that she is just a simple villager with no knowledge or grace, unfit to be a saintess. However, the knight disagrees, arguing that the saintess is chosen by God, so it is impossible for someone unfit for the position to be selected. The knight also adds that anyone unworthy of the title will be executed on the spot. Hearing this, Maggery starts sweating like crazy, realizing she has no choice but to accept the role of saintess. This makes Alistar smile, seeing that his plan is about to succeed. But Maggery wipes the smug smile off his worthless face when she plays her trump card. She immediately grabs his hand and then starts begging him to accompany her to the capital. Alistar is confused, wondering what the tramp is up to now. But Maggery is determined to take him down along with her, so she starts crying that his presence alone will give her great comfort. Realizing what she is up to, Alistar tries to get out of the situation by saying he will be useless if monsters were to attack. But the knight quickly assures him he will be protected as well. Frustrated, Alistar realizes that if he keeps refusing even after Maggery has begged him, everyone will start seeing him as some heartless monster. So, with no choice left, he reluctantly agrees to accompany her to the capital. But as soon as they reach the capital, Maggery knows Alistar will try to return home immediately. So while she's still thinking of how to stop him, Alistar beats her to it and quickly announces he's heading back. But when Helge suggests he relax and do some sightseeing, Maggery jumps at the idea, urging that they explore the city together. However, Alistar turns down the offer, saying he has to return to work, frustrating Maggery, who knows the useless waste of space never goes to work. But eventually, Alistar wins this time and then leaves Maggery in the capital while he heads to his village, hoping he finds himself some rich lover who will keep him fed and pampered. But on his way back to his village, he gets attacked by a pack of nasty goblins. He tries to run from the little monsters, but his worthless legs give up, since he has been skipping leg days like you. So he suddenly trips on a tree root and tumbles into a strange land. For some reason, he notices that the goblins have stopped chasing him. But as he tries to limp away, he realizes he's twisted his ankle. Still, he tries to find a place to hide, and that's when he suddenly sees a bright light shining from a nearby clearing. As he approaches the light, his eyes widen in shock. There, in the middle of the clearing, stands the holy sword used to defeat the Demon King ages ago, buried deep in the earth. As he stands there in awe, a holy aura washes over him, making him feel as though every trace of corruption in his heart is being purified. This holy sensation makes him sick, because he's never felt anything this way in his entire pathetic existence. So as he tries to look away, the sword suddenly starts talking like a human, asking him to come closer. This terrifies Alistar, and he immediately tries to scram, but the holy sword asks him to wait, promising to heal his injured leg. The mention of this promise immediately stops him dead in his tracks. The holy sword then goes on to explain that it's been lonely for ages, and it's been centuries since it last talked to any human. When the sword demands to know why he is even there, Alistar admits he is being chased by monsters. This somehow excites the sword, and it suggests that Alistar pulls it out so they can fight the monster together. But when Alistar refuses, admitting that he is far too useless to fight with a sword, the holy sword desperately promises to control his body and fight for him. Just then the goblins finally spot Alistar. As they charge in, ready to ice-sky him into another manga, Alistar panics, and in a sudden burst of desperation, yanks the holy sword from the ground. At that instant, the blade begins to glow like something straight out of a fantasy show, and Alistar is stunned to see that it has suddenly become lighter than air. Meanwhile, back at the capital, Magari is fidgeting with anxiety. She's losing her mind over being trapped there, while Alistar gets to live freely in the village. Bent on not letting him go scot-free, Magari puts on her sweetest, innocent face and suggests to Helge that they go after Alistar, pretending she's just worried her dear friend might get into trouble on his way home. The simp knight agrees, promising to send some knights after Alistar, but Marguerite insists on coming along with them. As she flashes her innocent puppy eyes, the fool melts and agrees again to let her tag along. Back in the forest, Alistar is terrified as the holy sword continues to emit this blinding pure aura. But all of a sudden, the bright light starts getting consumed by a dark aura, and even the holy blade is shocked to see its purity getting corrupted by the evil thought in Alistar's heart. When the sword mentions that it can hear all of Alistar's cultured thoughts because their minds are now linked, Alistar panics, horrified that someone else knows what kind of degenerate he truly is. So, as he considers getting rid of it, the sword quickly pleads with him not to think of something so scary. At that moment, the goblins start closing in on him, so Alistar commands the holy sword to show off its powers and make it rain blood. But he gets furious when the sword admits it can't obey him because it's lost its purity and is now all black. This makes Alistar begin to wonder if the sword is even holy anymore. But the sword snaps, insisting it's still a holy weapon, but just a corrupted one. It goes on to explain that it can still use its divine powers, but only if its contractor, meaning Alistar, speaks its name. Upon hearing that, Alistar decides that since its pure light is gone, and it now looks like a blade forged in sin, it's better to call it something else instead of a holy sword. So he names it a demon sword and commands it to unleash its power. But the instant he does, the cursed blade erupts with a violent dark aura that engulfs the entire area. From afar, Magari and Helge see the sinister aura, and Magari instantly knows that only one irredeemable piece of trash could create such an aura, and that's Alistar. So without wasting a second, she urges her knightly boy toy to head in that direction, claiming she has a strong feeling Alistar might be there. Meanwhile, with the holy sword now corrupted into an evil blade, its terrifying power takes control of Alistar, and in seconds, the entire goblins are obliterated. But after wiping out the freaky monsters, the sword starts rambling about them being partners and saving the world together as heroes. But as Alistar remembers his lifelong dream of marrying a rich sugar mummy, he instantly tries to ditch the useless sword and bury it forever. But the sword suddenly sprouts hands and grabs onto him, refusing to be used and dumped. As Alistar struggles to break free from its grip, he looks up and freezes. Standing in the bushes are Magari and Helge, staring at him like he's some deranged lunatic. Later, as Alistar returns to the capital with Magari and Helge, Magari starts mocking him, saying she's beyond happy to spend time with her best friend again. Alistar tries to act like he's fine with the situation, but deep down, he wishes the ground would open up and swallow him whole. To make matters worse, his sword also starts teasing him too, saying Magari is a cute and kind girl for choosing to be best friends with a lowlife like him. However, just then, Helge apologizes for bringing Alistar back to the capital by force, and explains that regarding the sword found in the forest, he's convinced it must be the legendary Holy Sword. And if that's the case, there's a high chance Alistar is now its contractor, so as a knight, he must report it to the king. But when he adds that Alistar must remain in the capital until further notice, Alistar freezes, unable to believe what he just heard. Magari, on the other hand, is happy beyond oblivion, grinning with all excitement. But Alistar is determined not to spend 1 minute with the crazy witch. So he shouts that the holy sword isn't holy at all, explaining that with how black the thing is, it's more of a demon's sword than anything divine. And then he demands they destroy and dispose of the cursed thing immediately. Helge agrees with him, admitting the sword looks kinda different from the legends, but then he says he still finds it hard to believe it's not the real holy sword. Growing desperate, Alistar switches tactics, and this time he suddenly starts crying that his village is poor and he must return home to help his people survive. Touched by his supposed selflessness, Helge praises him as an exemplary man but still refuses to let him go. Instead, Helge mentions that since the kingdom is forcing him to stay for their own benefit, they'll compensate him with a 5-star hotel in the capital and the best food available. Hearing this, our guy instantly does a full 180 and agrees, claiming he's only doing it for the good of the country. This makes Marguerite grin like a witch, so she grabs his hand, painfully digging her nails into his skin, delighted that she's finally succeeded in tying the fool down to the capital with her. So later that day, Alistar is checked into a 5-star hotel, where a pretty attendant welcomes him and shows him to his room. A bottle of red wine is already waiting, and Alistar wastes no time enjoying the luxury, while laughing that such treatment is only fitting for a handsome guy like him. But when the Holy Blade starts yapping about them doing hero work together, Alistar gets annoyed and immediately opens the window, ready to throw the hunk of metal out. But the sword warns that even if he tosses it away, it'll return almost immediately. Frustrated, Alistar tries explaining that his life purpose is to marry some rich sugar mummy and not play superhero. Still, the blabber sword insists that being a hero is his destiny, and he can't run from it. As the blade keeps going on about saving people and justice, Alistar cuts it off and says he's going to bed. However, before sleeping, he goes close to the mirror, takes a look at himself, and is happy that he has a hot face. Then, like a complete moron, he kisses his own reflection, and that's when he hears a girl scream outside and freezes. The sword comments how strange it is for a lady to be out at this hour, and immediately suggests they check it out. But Alistar shouts that all he wants is to sleep. Still, the sword will not let him sleep and insists they go carry out justice. With no choice, Alistar grudgingly agrees and heads out into the night to investigate. But as he starts grumbling about how dangerous it is to wander around the capital, especially with kidnappers and traffickers lurking everywhere, the sword keeps dragging him forward, urging him to move faster. By the time they reach the location of the scream, Alistar peeks from the corner and sees a strange girl just standing alone. As he begins to wonder why the girl is just standing there in the middle of the night, he immediately notices she has a nice backside. But then he also notices she is just talking to herself like an asylum escapee. She is stretching her hand to the moonlight and muttering some gibberish that makes absolutely no sense to him. This leads Alistar to conclude she must be high on expired agriculture, so he tells the sword they're leaving. But when the stubborn sword refuses, the two start fighting and cursing each other loudly like toxic exes, which attracts the attention of the crazy girl. As she turns, demanding to know who is spying on her, Alistar panics and quickly hides behind the wall. But realizing the girl had already seen him, Alistar decides to come out of hiding. After nervously scratching his head, he explains that he was just staying at an inn nearby when he heard her scream, and then apologizes for causing any trouble. But then, as he looks at the girl up close, he notices that she doesn't look like a drug addict. In fact, she is a hot baddie, but then she appears completely broke. As much as he'd love to smash this cake, money matters more, so he decides to give it a hard pass. But when the strange girl finally speaks up, explaining that she was just practicing for a play, Alistar realizes she was not crazy at all, as he had earlier thought, but just an actress. Even so, he encourages her to do her best and wishes her good night. But the girl suddenly grabs his clothes, begging him to stay. Alistar freezes, but she quickly explains that she's been practicing alone for too long, and since acting is meant to be watched, she wants him to be her audience. When he asks why, she says that since he's already seen her, she might as well ask. After thinking it over, Alistar decides he doesn't want anything to do with a broke girl. But when he tries to decline, he realizes he can't speak, and his mouth has been sealed by his sword. The sword scolds him, saying that with how the girl's dressed like a stripper, she might get into trouble if left alone, and then threatens to make him ugly if he doesn't help. Cornered, Alistar reluctantly agrees to stay and help her practice. Before they begin, she stretches out her hand for a shake and introduces herself as Silk. Alistar then shakes her hand and introduces himself in return. Meanwhile, at the castle, Marguerite is escorted by Helge to meet the king. The moment she sees the king, she nervously introduces herself, trying to put on her best act, fully aware that one wrong move could get her executed. The king compliments her appearance and demeanor, and then explains that because the prophecy came so suddenly, they hadn't had time to properly investigate her before bringing her to the castle. To confirm if she's truly the saintess, the king orders Helge to bring out a ring and instructs Marguerite to put it on. But Marguerite starts shivering, knowing that if she fails the test, she's as good as dead. She is almost at the verge of crying as she thinks about how all she ever wanted was to marry some rich dude who will spoil her with money. But now, she's standing on the edge of death. But the moment she slips the ring onto her trembling finger, a bright light bursts forth, proving she really is the saintess. The king immediately announces that Marguerite will begin training to become a full-fledged saintess. But then, out of nowhere, an arrogant jerk storms into the throne room, demanding to know what's going on. As Marguerite wonders who he might be, the people around her whisper that the intruder is Iria, the first prince of the kingdom. When the king asks what Prince Iria wants, the prince snaps that the kingdom doesn't need any stupid saintess, and then calls the prophecy a load of superstitious nonsense. Seeing that the prince is against the whole saintess crap, Marguerite figures this could be her ticket to freedom, so she starts silently rooting for him to keep pushing back. But when Prince Iria suddenly turns to her and calls her a tramp, demanding to know if she plans to take over the country, Marguerite flinches. But as she puts on her innocent face, the prince starts simping for her beauty and ends up complimenting her beauty instead. At the same time, in the alley, Silk is still giving her Oscar performance. Even though this is the last thing he wants, Alistar is forced to act in the ridiculous play. But when she hugs him out of nowhere, as a scene in the play, and presses her massive, jiggly puffs against his chest, our guy almost climaxes. But then she announces that the play has ended and thanks him for helping out. To show her appreciation, she offers him some food she made, and Alistar gladly accepts. But as they eat, Silk notices a crumb of bread on his cheek, so she picks it off, and then sucks it off her finger. After the meal, Silk admits that spending time with him was surprisingly fun, softly adding that she never thought she'd enjoy herself like that again. But Alistar can sense it's about to get emotional, so he quickly thanks her for the food, hoping to make a smooth exit. But just as he's about to leave, Silk drops a bomb, revealing that she's a slave who used to be a noble. And then she begins to tell her tragic story. Her father, she says, was a kind nobleman who always put the people first, even lowering their taxes to ease their burdens. But because of his goody-two-shoes attitude, other greedy nobles start seeing him as a threat, especially a short, fat noble known as Primo Zerat. So to get rid of him, Primo framed her father for a false crime. In the end, her father was executed, and their entire noble house collapsed. Silk herself was sold into slavery to none other than Primo Zerat, the same man who destroyed her family. After the narration, Silk apologizes for bringing up such a personal matter, but Alistar is speechless, hearing her awful past. His sword, however, immediately suggests they rescue her. But Alistar snaps, reminding it that their opponent is a noble, and they can't just waltz in demanding her release. But then, Alistar starts thinking if they can get some kind of proof that Primo murdered her parents, this could be used to get the knights to arrest the filthy noble. But Silk interrupts his thinking process when she starts talking about her dream to become a member of the Royal Capitol Theatre, saying she wants to be a part of a play that moves the hearts of many. She says it's been her dream since childhood, and that's why she's been working so hard. However, she then reveals that the Royal Theatre Troupe is holding its entrance test soon, and she would like to take it. When Alistar asks if the test is at night, she says yes, so he tells her to secretly take it. Silk is surprised by the suggestion, but Alistar explains that for her dream to come true, she'll have to make bold choices like this one. But as the sword compliments him for finally acting kindly, Alistar reveals that his true intention is for Silk to get caught by her master, so that will put an end to their night practices. The sword can't believe how heartless he is, but the clueless actress simply thanks him for his concern and promises to do her best. The following morning, as Alistar reads the morning papers, he starts daydreaming that if Silk succeeds in joining the theater troupe, she might introduce him to some rich girl and finally fulfill his life's dream. But his fantasy is interrupted by a knock at the door. Before he can even move to open the door, Marguerite barges in. But the instant Alistar sees her, he groans that her face alone is enough to ruin his morning, which is exactly why he tries to avoid her. But when Marguerite claps back that seeing him depressed makes her refreshed, Alistar demands to know what she's doing in his room. Marguerite breaks down, revealing that it's hard living in the castle. She says it's awful, complaining that her face has turned into a smiling mask because she always has to act all innocent around the clock, so her smelly attitude does not get discovered. As she sobs, repeating that it's awful, Alistar takes her predicament lightly and jokes that she quits smiling so much like a clown if it bothers her so much. However, when he adds that her misfortune makes him so happy, Marguerite snaps and says she hopes he kisses Truckcun and dies in the most pitiful way possible. That's when Alistar suddenly remembers something and asks Marguerite to lend him some money. But Marguerite instantly refuses, so Alistar desperately promises to pay her back. Still, Marguerite says a flat no and calls him a pathetic liar. When Alistar asks if he's ever broken a promise, she screams that he's worse than a politician, and then demands to know what he even needs the money for. As Alistar reveals that he plans on saving somebody with the money, Marguerite freezes and asks if his brain is still intact. Alistar dismisses her question and in turn asks if she doesn't get lots of cool cash for being a saintess. Marguerite explains that she only gets a little bit whenever she needs to get something. Even at that, Alistar desperately begs her to lend him the money and even bows his head to show how serious he is. Seeing his desperation, Marguerite pauses to think. She figures the only thing keeping Alistar in the capital is that cursed sword, but having him owe her a favor wouldn't hurt either. So she agrees to lend him the money, but on the condition that he pays an interest rate of 10% daily, which the idiot accepts. Later that night, Alistar returns to the alley and finds Silk already waiting for him. After apologizing for being late, he hands her a small package, explaining that it contains a dress. He further explains that since she would be taking the acting test, it would be best if she wears something nice. Silk is touched by his kind gesture, and as she promises to do her best, Alistar urges her to go change into the new dress. After changing, Silk returns looking like a princess. She tells Alistar that ever since she lost her parents and turned into a slave, she has been living a horrible life. But ever since she met him, she admits that he has been like a light, illuminating her pitch-black life. She confesses that at first she assumed he was some weird creep because of that ugly black sword he carries, but now she realizes he's actually kind. Right as those words leave her mouth, her short, bloated master, in the company of an ugly-looking girl who looks like Pennywise, suddenly enters the dark alley. Silk freezes in fear, and as she nervously asks her ugly freak of a master why he is there, the master, whose face looks like expired milk, says he came to find her since she dared to slip out of his residence. But when he notices her Gucci dress, he immediately demands to know where she got the money to buy such luxury. But as Silk remains silent, unsure of what to say, Primo immediately orders Pennywise beside him to handle it. As Pennywise lunges forward without hesitation, she grabs Silk by the throat and begins to choke the life out of her. As she squeezes tighter, she sneers that she's always hated Silk for being pretty, while her own face looks like something not even a mother could love. But watching life slowly draining out of Silk, Alistar immediately steps up to defend her by unleashing his black aura. The terrifying aura slams into Miss Penny and sends her crashing to the ground. As Alistar steps forward, Penny furiously demands to know who the heck he is. But as Alistar replies that he is here to save the future superstar, Penny calls him a stupid man. At that moment, Alistar draws his sword, ready to fight, even though deep down he's sweating buckets and wishing he'd just stayed at the hotel. But Primo starts mocking him, asking if he's the pathetic simp who's been taking such good care of his slave. On top of that, Primo accuses him of hitting his guard, whom he proudly mentions is a member of the Grey Guild. And since Alistar has no idea what a Grey Guild is, His sword quickly explains that it's basically a criminal organization where even murderers can join without question. However, just then, Silk starts shouting and begging Alistar to run away, saying she will be fine. And as Alistar starts considering running away like she advises, his sword calls him a useless weakling with no pride. The sword insists they have to save Silk, and after rethinking it over, Alistar realizes that he can't just let the expensive dress he worked so hard to buy get torn to shreds. So he decides to stay and fight like a man. But before he can even ready himself, Pennywise charges at him, aiming to slit his throat. As Alistar tries to defend himself with his corrupted sword, he is shocked when she suddenly vanishes from his front and reappears behind him at lightning speed. When she ducks low and swings for his leg, the sword takes control of his hand, forcing him to block her attack just in time. This surprises Penny, and when she demands to know if Alistar belongs to some guild or if he's a knight, Alistar smugly tells her that he's just a farmer. But when she notices his dark sword, she points out that it doesn't look ordinary. Alistar confirms it isn't, and as he proudly tells her it's the legendary cursed sword, the meathead master suddenly starts screaming like a lunatic, shouting that the cursed sword is the one said to bestow great riches upon its user. Hearing this, Penny's eyes widen in shock, and her mouth is left wide open for flies to enter. Suddenly, she starts saying she has fallen in love with him and his huge sword. Alistar is stunned to hear this, but his sword starts teasing him that he has bagged himself a wife. So as Penny starts begging Alistar to take her home so he can use his big sword on her, Prima yells at the tramp to stay focused and eliminate the enemy instead of trying to get piped. But Penny coldly tells him to shut his gutter mouth, warning that nothing will stop her from getting what she wants, not even him. Terrified, Primo quickly backs off, telling her to do whatever she wants. So as Penny charges straight at Alistar again, this time even faster, Alistar panics, but his cursed sword tells him to leave everything to him. At blinding speed, Penny swings her blade, but somehow Alistar manages to deflect the strike. This only ticks her off, so she warns that she's about to get serious and lunges again. However, this time, Alistar is shocked when he sees her disappear. But from out nowhere, Penny suddenly materializes and slices his arm and back in a single motion. Alistar tries to play it cool, acting like the wounds are nothing, but inside, the guy is in pain and crying about his flawless skin getting scarred. But his sword blames him, saying it can't fully control his body because he's far too weak and useless. When Penny charges again, Alistar swears he'll end her this time, and even the sword is ready to back him up. However, when she disappears once more, Alistar tenses up, but his sword asks him to chill, assuring him that it has already gotten used to her style of fighting. So the instant Penny appears behind him for a sneak attack, Alistar slams the hilt of his blade into her stomach. As she staggers backward while holding her stomach, she nervously wonders how Alistar managed to see her. So when Alistar replies that it's because he has gotten used to her style of fighting, his sword angrily reminds him that he stole his line. As Penny finally regains herself, she realizes that the young man is stronger than her, so she angrily clones herself into 3 and rushes him. Alistar almost peed his pants in fear, but his sword tells him it's not what it looks like, and then urges him to use all his senses to perceive her. When he listens, concentrating with everything he's got, he senses the real Penny among the illusions and slashes clean through her, dropping her instantly. The thrill of defeating an exceptional enemy makes Alistar shout in victory. But when his blade starts teasing him, asking how he feels after doing something good, Alistar yells at it to stop spitting crap and reminds it that because of what they've done, they might have attracted the attention of the Grey Guild. Meanwhile, the pig-faced master still finds it impossible that Penny, a member of the Grey Guild, could be defeated so easily. But as Alistar shows him his sword, he warns that he's next in line to get clapped. But before that happens, Alistar gives him a lifeline to either release Silk from slavery or meet his maker. But when Primo insists that owning Silk is his legal right, Alistar pulls out a couple of loose papers and tosses them into the air. He explains that the papers are proof that Primo planned the murder of Silk's parents and unfairly turned her into his slave. When Alistar threatens to hand the evidence over to the knights, Primo's pudgy face turns red and almost explodes from fury. Realizing he's been played, Primo starts threatening to report Alistar to the Grey Guild. Feeling pity for him, Alistar suggests they let the issue slide, thinking Primo might actually be reflecting on his mistake. But his blade refuses, saying the pig will only do it to another girl. But Alistar yells at his sword, reminding it that he doesn't give a flying fudge about other people's business, seeing how indecisive Alistar is. Primo starts laughing, mocking him and calling him a worthless farmer. But at that moment, Alistar's blade takes full control of his body. He tries to resist, but his limbs move on their own until he finally strikes down the puffer-fish-faced master. Later that day, in his hotel room, Alistar starts worrying about how Silk will survive now that she's regained her freedom and Primo has been arrested. With no money and no place to stay, her future seems hopeless. But when his sword suggests he support her, Alistar gets pissed and reminds it that he also needs support. Suddenly, there's a knock on the door, and the innkeeper tells him that a woman named Silk is looking for him. Meanwhile, back at the castle, Prince Iria invites Magari to the theater, but all Magari wants is to go home and sleep. However, as the prince explains that there will be an entrance test at the theater that day and the place will be packed with young people who want to fulfill their dreams, Magari tries to pretend that she is happy to be there. But deep down, young people with dreams for the future are exactly the kind of people she hates. Glancing at the prince, Magari can already tell he's become a full-blown simp for her. And even though she's always dreamed of finding a billionaire to milk dry, she never expected someone at the level of a prince to fall into that role. The life of a queen sounds exhausting, too much trouble, too much responsibility, and that's one life Magari has no interest in living. When the prince calls her attention and starts talking about her as a priestess who supports the country by his side, Magari realizes the dude is most likely about to confess. The moment he takes her hands, she panics internally, praying someone will save her. Luckily, Helge appears from nowhere, announcing that the king has summoned the prince. So the prince apologizes for the interruption and promises that next time they will go somewhere they won't be interrupted. Just as the prince takes his leave, Magari slumps into her chair in relief. When the next applicant for the entrance test is called, Silk comes out ready to perform. But seeing her, Magari feels she is too dull and won't be able to give any reasonable performance. But while standing on stage, Silk starts thinking about Alistar and wonders if he will come watch her perform. She recalls how, just a few minutes ago, she had met Alistar in his hotel room to thank him for giving her freedom. When Alistar asked what she planned to do now that she was free, Silk replied that since reviving her family house was impossible, the only option left was to chase her dream of becoming an actress. She then gave him a complimentary ticket to come watch the entrance exam. But when she shyly asked if he'd like to come see her perform, Alistar freaked out and nervously blurted that he was looking forward to watching her act. Back in the present, as Silk hopes he'll actually show up, one of the event organizers calls her over and explains that for the test, she'll have to perform a play titled The Tales of Elias. It's the story of a princess who was kidnapped, and to save her, the hero Elias must battle the villain Jayaberry. When the organizer asks if Silk plans to act the play alone without supporting characters, she confidently replies that she will. But suddenly a man steps forward, saying he's available to help. Silk freezes in shock as the muscular man approaches and leans close, whispering in her ear that it's nice to meet her, but then coldly calls her a slave. He introduces himself as Albert, the guild master of the Grey Guild. When the organizers approve both of them to perform the exam together, Albert says he'll play Jayaberry, the villain of the story. But just as the play is about to begin, Silk quietly asks Albert why he's after her, since Primo has already been captured by the knights. But Albert mistakes her question for part of the act and plays along, saying the reason he wants to capture her is because the hero, Elias, will surely come for her, so he's using her as bait. Hearing this, Silk's eyes widen in shock as she finally realizes that the Grey Guild's target is not her but Alistar, and Albert is there to take revenge on Alistar for defeating Penny. Shortly after, as Alistar arrives at the theater, he's immediately surrounded by a gang of thugs who look like thieves. As he starts to panic, blaming his sword for making him come by threatening to make him ugly, one of the thugs moves closer and asks if he is the one who beat Penny like a useless thief. But before Alistar can reply, the dude tells him they're members of the Grey Guild. He adds that since Alistar humiliated their guild, Their boss is mad furious and plans to torture both him and the slave girl before taking their worthless lives. Alistar immediately draws his blade, ready to unalive them, but his corrupted sword refuses, saying they should only beat them up and quickly go find Silk. Meanwhile, back on stage, Albert is having the time of his life, mocking Silk that her so-called hero won't come. He tells her he's already sent a few losers to slow him down or finish him off before he gets here. In the meantime, he says he'll enjoy playing with her while he can. All the while, Marguerite is seated in the audience, enjoying the play, completely unaware that things have gotten real. As she daydreams about the story and secretly wishes some hero would come save her too, she's startled to see Alistar crouching beside her like a raccoon. She wonders what the fool is doing there and is about to ask, but Alistar beats her to it, demanding to know what she's doing there. Marguerite explains her situation with the prince, and when she asks about the wounds on his body, Alistar gets embarrassed and admits that a lot has happened, but all he wants now is to go home. But when his dark blade refuses, insisting they must save Silk, Alistar yells at it to shut its steel mouth, and then makes it clear that he's not related to Silk in any way. But as they argue, Marguerite can somehow hear what the dark blade is saying, and is surprised that the sword can actually talk. Meanwhile, up the stage, Silk starts hyping up the hero according to the storyline of the play, telling Alistar that the hero can never lose to a donkey like him. Hearing this, Alistar almost loses his mind, angry that the girl is making the situation even more difficult for him. So he cries like a scared little girl, saying it's too much for him, and he doesn't understand why he has to do such scary and painful things every time. But when his blade threatens to take control and make him move if he doesn't act, Marguerite suddenly stands, saying there won't be any need for that. She then points dramatically at the villain on stage, warning him that he won't be allowed to do as he pleases. Then she points to Alistar, proudly boasting that he is the hero, Elias. But Alistar panics and yells at her, asking what she thinks she is doing. When she explains that if he defeats the villain here, the news of his victory will spread across the capital, Alistar instantly realizes the scummy girl is trying to trap him in the capital. And just as he suspects, Marguerite's plan is to make everyone see Alistar as the only one capable of wielding the holy sword. Knowing this is her intention, Alistar decides to drag her into the mess as well. So, facing Albert, he declares that he won't allow him to commit any evil acts in front of the priestess. Marguerite freezes the second she realizes what he's trying to do. When she nervously points it out, Alistar confirms it, explaining that if everyone knows the priestess helped the holy sword user defeat the villain, then she won't be able to leave the capital either. So as Alistar approaches the stage with Marguerite, he assures Silk that he will do everything possible to protect her dream. But just then, Albert asks if he's the Elias they've been waiting for, adding that he never expected him to defeat the useless underlings he sent to slow him down. He smirks and says he didn't expect Alistar to bring the priestess along either. Then he laughs, promising that after sending Alistar to the afterlife, he'll destroy both girls' backs with his clapping rod. But as Alistar fires back, saying he'll be the one beating him to a pulp, Albert pauses and admits that he likes his confidence. He then asks Alistar to join his guild, saying that with his strength and swag, he would have all the money and cheeks to clap. But Alistar isn't tempted by crime money. So as he refuses, saying their ways of thinking are vastly different, Albert sighs, says that's unfortunate, and then starts taking off his shirt. Alistar watches in confusion, wondering if the guy is about to give him a lap dance, until he realizes Albert's already jacked body is getting even bigger and more ripped by the second. As Alistar wonders what the heck is going on with Albert, his blade explains that it's called metal magic. It's a spell that makes the user's body as tough and heavy as steel, and apparently Albert just coated his skin with it. However, the blade assures him that such magic only makes the target slow. But after transforming into a hulking beast, Albert declares the start of the fight and then charges forward at blinding speed. The moment their blades clash, Alistar realizes the dumb sword lied, and Albert's speed is anything but slow. As Albert begins to overwhelm him with precise attacks, Alistar starts to panic, and even Silk, watching from the side, trembles for his life. When Alistar gets kicked to the gut, his blade apologizes for being useless, but Alistar starts crying, saying he is done and wants to go home. But the sword refuses, telling him they still stand a chance if he just moves faster. But before he can even respond, Alistar notices Magari staring at him with a judgmental facial expression. When he glares back, wondering what her problem is, Magari calmly tells him he can't expect to win fighting worse than an old granny. Hearing this, Alistar starts wondering if she's off her meds again, until his sword cuts in, whispering that Magari can actually hear their conversation. When the dark blade asks Magari if she can really hear its voice, Magari confirms she can. This comes as a shock because only those compatible with the divine sword can hear its voice. As Alistar tries to question her further, Magari tells him to cut it out, and then tells him that he doesn't have the stamina to continue avoiding Albert's attack. When Alistar admits she is right, Magari laughs and starts teasing him for never using his hand to hold a sword before but just to wank his life away. She then gets serious and explains that the longer the fight drags on, the more stamina he'll burn and the slower he'll get. She tells him that waiting for the perfect opportunity to strike is useless because he clearly doesn't have the energy to keep holding on. With a serious look, she advises that if he wants to murder someone, then he should do it in a single moment and don't hesitate. When Alistar asks how he's supposed to pull that off, Magari tells him to use the terrifying power he unleashed in the forest against the goblins. As she begs him to hurry up and do it, Alistar is surprised to see her beg for once in her messy life. Just then, Albert interrupts, asking if they're done talking. He tells Alistar he's actually a nice guy for waiting for them to finish, since he figured he should let them say their goodbyes. But before they go at it again, the Dark Sword suggests to Alistar that they use a special move called the Holy Slash. Alistar has no idea what that even means, but he agrees anyway. As Albert charges in, ready to end the fight once and for all, Alistar activates this so-called Holy Slash, and suddenly the entire theater is covered in a dark aura. As Albert freezes in fear, demanding to know what that strange power is, Alistar proudly tells him it's the Holy Slash. But suddenly, tentacles begin sprouting from Alistar's hand, which makes him screams in terror. Panicking, Albert nervously demands to know who the heck Alistar truly is. And when Alistar tells him he is just a guy fated to be burdened with fighting with a cursed sword, Albert fearfully starts sweating like crazy. In the midst of the terrifying dark aura, Alistar swings his sword and the sheer backlash sends Albert crashing to the ground, knocking him out instantly. With Albert defeated, everyone is finally relieved. But Alistar is shocked when his blade remarks that his body certainly doesn't have the strength to fight the way it had imagined, and then admits that Magari must really know him too well. Suddenly, a flashback of their childhood instantly invades Alistar's head. When they were little, Magari used to cling to him like a leech. Even as they got older, they were always together searching for each other's weaknesses. Back in the present, the blade tells Alistar that even though he's scum, Magari has always stayed by his side and even offered advice to help him win the fight. When the blade points out that Magari might actually be in love with him, Alistar is irritated to hear this, and even Magari, who had been listening, also shows a hint of annoyance on her face. But just then, someone interrupts the moment by shouting Alistar's name. When he turns, Silk pounces on him and crushes his useless face with her double missiles. She apologizes for making him go through so much, saying she never thought the sword was cursed. But Alistar tells her it's fine, saying he is just glad to have been able to protect her dream. Suddenly, someone interrupts, asking to have a moment. It's the examiners who says they are impressed with the acting, but Silk is surprised that the clown still thinks it's all acting. However, when they say they would love to have her join the Royal Capitol Theater, Alistar starts thinking, realizing that if Silk becomes a famous actress, she might introduce him to some rich noblewoman. So he quickly congratulates her for achieving her dream of becoming a famous actress. But while this is ongoing, Magari is lost in thought, thinking about the cursed holy sword and wondering if she too can also wield it like Alistar. Later that day, Alistar is summoned to the castle and escorted to see the king by Helge. When his sword asks why they've been summoned, Alistar guesses it's probably because the higher-ups have decided to get rid of it. He laughs, saying that since everyone saw it reveal its cursed nature during the fight with that muscle buffoon, this might be their last time together. Alistar cheerfully speculates that the sword will likely be sealed again for another 1,000 years, while he himself returns to his village to live a carefree life. But just then, someone shouts his name from behind. When he turns, he sees Marguerite running toward him, saying she was worried about him. Suddenly, another voice calls out, this time, someone shouting Marguerite's name. She turns to see that ugly bozo of a prince, who immediately starts scolding her for leaving the castle without telling him. As he walks up to her, promising to always protect her like her bodyguard, Marguerite tells him she only came to meet her childhood friend. The mention of childhood friend instantly pisses the prince off. So when Alistar introduces himself as Marguerite's friend, the prince sneers, calling him a broke peasant and warning him never to talk to royalty like they're equals. So Alistar quickly apologizes, but in his mind, he quietly asks his sword if they can slash the useless waste of royal blood. But the sword refuses, reminding him that the donkey is still a prince after all. Just as the prince leaves with Marguerite, Helge also tells Alistar that they should get going too. When they reach the throne room, the king tells Alistar that he now entrusts the holy sword to him. But seeing the shock on Alistar's face, the king explains that since he is the chosen one, he is now officially the holy sword wielder of the new generation. But when the prince objects, saying they can't just hand a national treasure to an ordinary loser, his father tells him to calm down and then explain that only compatible people can wield the legendary holosword. To prove this, the king uses Helge as the experimental guinea pig, asking him to try taking the sword from Alistar's hand. Helge obeys, but the moment he reaches for the blade, his youthful life is almost cut short as a dark aura nearly consumes him. Seeing this, the king notes that the sword looks far more ominous than what he'd heard in the old legends. He speculates that since the blade has been sealed for so long, it must have absorbed a disgusting amount of dark magical power. Then the king says he heard that Alistar has mastered the sword's ominous magic. Alistar freaks out and tries to deny it, but Marguerite suddenly appears and confirms that her best friend has indeed mastered the cursed sword's powerful magic. To make matters worse, Marguerite starts narrating to the king how Alistar had sacrificed himself to save everyone back at the theater, and then finally concludes by saying that she believes strongly that Alistar is the new age holy sword user. Alistar almost bursts into tears, realizing Marguerite is doing everything possible to keep him stuck in the capital. And as he tries to protest again, the king silences his stupid mouth and orders him to remain in the capital for the sake of the kingdom's peace. With no choice, Alistar bows in obedience, saying he understands. Trying to console himself, he starts daydreaming about living an easy life in a fancy inn right in the capital. But the king interrupts his fantasy, saying he has a job for him. The king explains that the saintess will soon embark on a pilgrimage to the Mermaid village, and he wants Alistar to serve as her guard. Marguerite smiles at the news, and as she tells him she'll be in his care, Alistar nearly loses his mind. He can't believe he's being forced to go on another journey with her again. Meanwhile, on a beach near the Mermaid village, a shady business negotiation is taking place. A group of traders is buying mermaids in exchange for coins and jewelry. Shockingly, the one selling them out is a wicked mermaid known as Pamela, profiting off her own kind for money, gems, and art. Meanwhile, halfway to the Mermaid village, Alistar is already exhausted from carrying his heavy sword. So when he threatens to toss it away, the sword panics and begs him to calm down, reminding him that the holy sword user cannot throw the holy sword away. But as Alistar complains of making such a long journey on foot, the blade tells him he should have ridden a horse instead. But Alistar gets pissed and yells that he has never ridden a horse before in his entire life. Just then, Marguerite, who's been enjoying herself inside a comfortable carriage, starts teasing him, asking if he's doing all right. But eventually, she takes pity on the poor guy and tells him to hop in. So the lazy lump doesn't hesitate for a second before rushing inside. A few hours later, they arrive at a small village near the Mermaid village, where a disgusting fatso loser waddles over to welcome them. As the fatso introduces himself as one of the locals and warmly greets the saintess, Marguerite smiles sweetly, thanking him while fooling everyone with her innocent face. After the warm reception, the dude tells them that if they're lucky, they might catch a glimpse of a mermaid nearby. Marguerite and Alistar are both shocked to hear this. But when Marguerite asks if mermaid really show up in the village, the fat dude, who is shaped like a rhino, admits he hasn't actually seen one with his 2 eyes. When Marguerite says she'd love to see one, he warns her to be careful of their songs. He explains that while mermaids are beautiful, their voices are even more dangerous, said to charm people and drag them to the bottom of the sea. The thought of being dragged underwater sends cold shivers down both Marguerite's and Alistar's spines. But then the fatty laughs it off, saying the story is all legend and rumors, and then he informs Marguerite and Alistar that an inn has been prepared for them. Later that night, Alistar can't sleep because the inn smells worse than a sewer. And to make matters worse, his cursed sword keeps telling him about hearing some girl's voice outside. But Alistar angrily tells it to shut up, insisting that he didn't hear anything. But the blade keeps pestering him to go check it out, threatening to make him ugly if he doesn't. Defeated, Alistar finally agrees. And as they follow the sound, he mutters that if nothing's wrong, they're heading straight back to bed. Suddenly, they hear the voice again, however, this time in the direction of the ocean, so the sword immediately drags Alistar towards it. But when they reach the shore, they spot a girl sitting by the water, singing softly. Alistar points out that everything looks perfectly normal, but his blade insists she's tormenting herself over something and keeps pulling him closer. But as Alistar struggles and yells in protest, his shouting catches the girl's attention. But the instant she turns around to know who's behind her, Alistar freezes in shock when he sees she's a mermaid. But the girl freezes too, shocked to see a human behind her, and both of them end up screaming their heads off like idiots. When the mermaid girl accuses Alistar of trying to kidnap her, Alistar is shocked, but he immediately denies it. Still, she refuses to believe, and this time she accuses him of trying to do indecent things to her. But Alistar yells that he isn't trying to. He then tries to calm her down, introducing himself and explaining that he only came because he heard a girl's voice and got worried. He insists he means no harm, adding that the whole situation is terrifying for him too, especially after hearing that mermaids drag humans into the sea. But the mermaid tells him it's all cap, and then explains that the ones who drown do it to themselves because they get too obsessed with mermaid songs. However, she admits that she never expected anyone would come to the beach this late at night. When she reveals that humans have been capturing and selling mermaids, Alistar is stunned to hear this, so he as if humans really do such a cruel thing. The mermaid sadly confirms it, explaining that humans have been catching and selling her kind to the slave markets. Alistar can't believe the level of human trash he's hearing about. So when his blade tells him to ask her more questions, Alistar snaps, shouting that it's none of their business. But the sword insists they need to help her. Alistar reluctantly agrees, so when he asks what she's doing on the beach at this hour, the mermaid girl gets emotional as she explains that she came to practice singing. She further explains that from the moment mermaids are born, they are all gifted singers, but she isn't as good as everyone else. She admits that's why she practices in secret, to become as good as her older sister someday. Alistar is surprised to hear she has an older sister. When he asks about her, the mermaid suddenly switches into full fangirl mode, gushing that her sister is the most beautiful and talented person in the entire ocean. She goes on and on until she finally admits that, as her younger sister, she feels like a total disgrace. Just by looking at her face, Alistar can tell she's been compared to her sister her whole life. So without thinking, he starts giving her one of those motivational speeches from Instagram, telling her not to give up and to keep doing her best. The girl stares at him, wide-eyed and shocked, and even his dark blade is stunned that such kind words exist inside his rotten soul. But then, out of nowhere, the mermaid starts yelling that she won't let herself be fooled by his sweet talk, and accuses him of trying to seduce her just to kidnap her. But when Alistar calmly tells her he would do no such thing, she laughs and apologizes, saying she was just joking with him. She tells him he is a good human, and then asks if it would be okay if she can make a small request. Alistar is surprised, but before he can answer, she explains that she is a loner with no friends, because she's never gotten along with the other mermaids, and then asks if he would like to be her friend. Alistar is caught off guard and immediately blurts out that it sounds awful. As she freaks out at his response, Alistar panics, realizing that he has accidentally let his real thoughts slip out. As she starts crying, thinking he finds being her friend disgusting, Alistar suddenly remembers the rumor that mermaid tears turn into jewels, so he figures he should let her cry even more. But his blade starts punishing him with a splitting headache and threatens to make him ugly again. So Alistar quickly apologizes, saying he didn't mean being her friend was awful, and then explains that it's awful hearing about how lonely she was. When he assures her that they are friends already, she smiles, admitting that it makes her happy, and then introduces herself as Noel. The next morning, Alistar is woken up by his sword. But since all he wants is sleep, he tells it to shut up and threatens to blow it into smithereens. Still, the sword will not let him rest in peace, and he is forced to wake. But when Alistar starts hearing noise outside, the sword explains that it's been like that for a while and then suggests they go check it out. Stepping out of the inn, Alistar sees a crowd gathered, and among them he spots Marguerite. When he asks what's happening, Marguerite tells him a mermaid has come to the village. Just then, Pamela, the elder sister to Noel, approaches them and introduces herself. But as Alistar is surprised to see that the mermaid girl has feet, Marguerite explains that, according to a book she read, mermaids can also take human form. But when Pamela says she came to personally greet the priestess and asks where for her whereabout, Marguerite immediately starts to panic. But to punish her, Alistar immediately grabs Marguerite by the shoulders and shouts that the priestess is right here. But in that moment, Pamela's eyes fall on the holy sword strapped to Alistar's waist, so she adds that she would also like to meet the hero of the holy sword. Pamela says she's the leader of the mermaids, so when she heard the saintess and the hero had come to town, she decided to come and greet them. She tells them she'll be their guide to Mermaid Island, and when she asks them to come with her, Alistar and Marguerite immediately starts to panic. Thinking fast, Alistar crouches down and pretends to be in pain. When Pamela asks what's wrong, our guy lies that it's all because of the sword he carries. He explains that since the sword possesses immense magical power, he's always under terrible, constant strain. Hearing this, Marguerite is left speechless at how smoothly the idiot can lie. Even the devil needs to learn a trick or two from him. When Alistar claims he won't be able to accompany them to the Mermaid Island, Helge wastes no time volunteering to go in his place and swears to protect the saintess. Alistar immediately realizes the guy is hopelessly simping for Marguerite. So he turns to her and says there's nothing to worry about since Helge will be going. But while Marguerite boils with anger that Alistar won't be accompanying them, Pamela interrupts, saying it's unfortunate since she would have loved to escort the hero. However, as she thanks them for the meeting, she suddenly begins to sing her siren song. She sings it so beautifully that the entire village falls into a trance, captivated by her melody. But just as the sword starts warning Alistar that it's a bad song, it is shocked to find Alistar visibly irritated by it. Not just him, even Marguerite complains that she wishes she were deaf, so she wouldn't have to hear such a disgusting tune. Realizing the two scums are somehow immune to the charm, the sword explains that the song carries strong magic that drives people madly in love and allows the siren to control them. But seeing even Helge is far gone in love with the song, the sword points out how strange it is that an ordinary peasant like Alistar isn't affected by the song, and suspects it must be because his latent magic resistance is high. After her Grammy-worthy performance, Pamela, confident that everyone's fallen for her charm, reaches her hand toward Alistar and asks him to come with her and to become friends. But when Alistar coldly turns her down, just like your crush rejecting your ugly face, Pamela freezes in disbelief, realizing that the Gigachad has just become the only man alive to resist her spell. While she wonders why her magic failed, our guy's just thinking that if it's not mansions or money to last a lifetime, nothing else can sway him. But when his sword starts pondering on why Pamela would want Alistar so badly that she'd even use charm magic, Alistar brushes it off, saying because she is Noel's sister, he doesn't want to get involved with another nutcase. However, the sword insists it smells something fishy, and when it suggests they go with her, Marguerite overhears and loudly tells Pamela that Alistar will be joining them after all. As Pamela admits she's glad to hear this, Marguerite is excitedly thinking how fun it always is to watch Alistar gets dragged into some troublesome mess. When they reach the beach, Pamela transforms back into her mermaid form and magically creates a bubble, which she tells Alistar and Marguerite to get in. As they enter the bubble, she descends with them into the sea. During the journey, Magari remembers hearing Alistar mention Noel to his sword and jealously questions him about her. As Alistar explains that Noel is a hot mermaid he met the night before and adds that Pamela is her sister, Magari gets jealous but hides it by teasing him for meeting girls in the middle of the night. But just then, Pamela notices they chat like friends, and when she comments about their closeness, Magari tells her that they are childhood friends. Pamela goes quiet after that, but as she keeps sneaking glances at Alistar, she continues to wonder why her charm didn't work on him. Even if he is the hero, she wonders why such a powerful spell like siren will fail. So she begins to suspect the Holy Sword's power is behind it, and that suspicion makes her desire for the sword grow even stronger. She desperately wants a weapon that powerful, one that can't be bought with any amount of money. However, she can't help but wonder why the Holy Sword is radiating such a dark, sinister color. As they later arrive at Mermaid Island, other beautiful mermaids rush out to welcome Pamela back. When Pamela introduces Magari as the saintess and Alistar as the hero, the mermaid girls immediately mistake Helge for the hero because of his bulky build. But when Pamela corrects them and says Alistar is the hero, they are surprised at how weak he looks. Just then, Noel rushes out of the cave to greet her sister, but as she sees Alistar, she freezes in shock. When Pamela demands to know how Noel got to know Alistar, her silence immediately makes her figure that Noel had gone to the human village alone. As Noel apologizes for disobeying, the other mermaid starts gossiping about her continuous stubbornness, which makes her emotional. But just then, Alistar interrupts, explaining that he met Noel the night before and then clears the misunderstanding by telling everyone that Noel is his friend. Pamela is surprised to hear this, but Alistar ignores her completely and then approaches Noel to ask that she be their guide around the island. As he explains that he will like to be shown around by a friend, Pamela starts getting jealous. But to hide her jealousy, she agrees and then urges Noel to go ahead and give the hero a proper tour. As Noel happily leads Alistar and Magari through the island, Helge and the other knights shouts, asking to join, but Pamela shuts their stinking mouths, insisting she will guide them instead. Before long, as Noel guides them into a cave, she excitedly introduces herself to Magari as Pamela's younger sister. Magari in turn also introduces herself as Alistar's childhood friend, but immediately after the introduction, Magari suddenly grabs Noel's hands and starts encouraging her friendship with Alistar. She tells her that Alistar is a super nice guy and then assures her that he will never stop being her friend. Understanding what is going on, Alistar tenses up, knowing that Magari is trying so hard just to sabotage him. But suddenly, someone screams, and when Noel asks if they heard the scream too, Alistar and Magari denies, claiming they didn't hear a thing. But Noel insists she heard it loud and clear, and then says they must go check it out in case the scream is somehow related to the case of the missing mermaids. When they arrive at the location of the scream, they see two cloaked dudes tying up two mermaids like goats to be slaughtered. When Noel angrily demands to know what the heck they think they are doing, the fear of getting caught on their faces made her figure they are the humans abducting the mermaids. But just then, someone asks Noel to calm down. A guy steps forward, introduces himself as Toimi, and then says he is the master of the Grey Guild known as Nutainen. As Toimi explains they were hired by someone to escort the mermaids, Noel angrily tells him that his method of escorting doesn't look accommodating. But Toimi tells her that it has nothing to do with them, and then mentions that the individual they work for would also want her delivered as well. But Noel angrily refuses to be sold like cattle, and then clearly states that talk time is over. So as she summons her massive pitchfork known as Philomena, she confidently tells the blonde fool that she will chop off their balls, feed them to the vultures, and then release her fellow mermaids. But the dude laughs, and as he summons his lightning magic, Noel is surprised that he can harness something like that. Since a mermaid's magic is water, lightning magic is a bad matchup. So when Magari explains that water conducts electricity, Alistar wonders how the heck she knew so much. But at that moment, Toimi is already blasting them with a powerful surge of lightning strong enough to roast them all into beefsteak. But somehow they all manage to avoid getting hit. So while Noel goes after Toim, the sword tells Alistar to handle the two other hooded goons at the back. As Toimi keeps firing lightning, one of the hooded goons takes advantage of the chaos and grabs Marguerite. When the sword alerts Alistar that Marguerite has been captured, Alistar brushes it off, saying she will be fine, but the sword calls him a scum for not even trying to help. Meanwhile, Marguerite will not go down easily. So as she fights to be free, even jamming her fingers into the dude's eyes, the guy screams and eventually let go. But realizing that the guy was just about to capture her and make her a slave, Marguerite decides she'll unalive him. As she gives him a glare so menacing, he immediately takes off running. Meanwhile, Noel keeps fighting Toimi with everything she has. But as she tries to stab him with her pitchfork, she misses and stabs his cloak instead. Toimi then takes advantage of this and channels lightning through her pitchfork, sending the shock straight into her body. On the other hand, Alistar is clashing sword with Toimi's last minion. But out of nowhere, Marguerite picks out a huge stone and smashes the dude's head with it so hard that even Alistar is surprised she can even pull of such a barbaric move. With Noel still struggling on the ground after being electrocuted, Toimi asks her to stop fighting and just surrender quietly. But Noel refuses, and as she tries to stand up, she declares that even though she is a mermaid that is terrible at singing, she can still use magic. Suddenly, water from nowhere starts gathering, and as Toimi nervously demands to know what she's doing, Noel casts a spell that traps him in a swirling mass of salt water. When Noel tries to use his lightning magic on the water to escape, it fizzles out, making him realize his magic is useless against the water and he has been trapped inside. But as he starts ranting, asking Noel if trapping him inside was all she could possibly do, Noel charges straight inside the water, armed with her pitchfork, and then stabs him right in stomach. As she grins like a creep, she tells him that they're her still mermaid like her, and then drives her pitchfork even deeper inside. As the water increases, Noel pushes Toimi underwater and disappears with him. After a few minutes later, Noel suddenly burst out of the water, smiling sheepishly. As she explains, she only wanted to teach the idiot a lesson. Alistar and Marguerite stare, speechless at the terrifying mermaid power they just witnessed. When they return to meet the other mermaids, the girls start praising Noel for her heroic effort in defeating the bad guys. But Noel, embarrassed, tries to be modest, saying she was only able to win because of Alistar's help. Hearing this, the dumb girls begin to question Alistar's loyalty, pointing out that he's a human and even too lean to be a hero. But Noel silences their stupid mouths by vouching for him, saying he's not like those scums, and reminding them that Alistar also helped capture the culprits. When Pamela arrives, the mermaids immediately rush to inform her that Noel caught the slave hunters, and as expected, the culprits were humans. Pamela is surprised to hear this, but when she hugs Noel and calls her amazing, Marguerite senses something is off. As Pamela sees Toimi tied up, she pretends not to know the guy, and when she asks who he is, Noel tells her he is one of the culprits whom she spared. During the interrogation, Noel summons her pitchfork and immediately orders Toimi to speak. When she demands to know who sent him to hunt mermaids, Toimi nervously begs for his life before revealing that a noble named Macmillian was the one behind it. The name rings a bell as Noel quickly recalls that Macmillian governs the human territory closest to them. When she demands to know how he discovered where the mermaids live, Toimi starts shaking like a terrified girl. But before he can answer, Pamela suddenly ends the interrogation by slicing off his head with her own pitchfork. While everyone is stunned by Pamela's actions, Alistar and Marguerite are scared out of their minds. So to start the investigation into Macmillian, Pamela calls out to Alistar and asks him to head to the noble's residence to check if any mermaids are being held captive and to free them. Even though this is the last thing Alistar wants, one glance at Toimi's headless corpse makes him tremble and immediately agree to the mission. But as Pamela thanks him for his cooperation, Marguerite, who's been quietly enjoying Alistar's fear, tries to slip out of the situation by making an excuse to return to the capital. But she's caught off guard when Alistar requests that she accompany him on the mission. He explains that having a saintess present will prevent the nobles from covering up their crimes. Manipulating the situation further, he asks if she plans to ignore the suffering of the innocent. Cornered, Marguerite begrudgingly agrees to go, claiming she'll accept the request. When Helge and the other knights mention that they can't join them because they have errands on the island, Alistar didn't see any need for them anyways, since they've been totally useless. Before long, Alistar and the girls arrive at the noble Macmillion's mansion. As Alistar wonders how they'll get inside, Noel suddenly starts yelling like a lunatic, demanding Macmillion come out already. When Alistar calls her a dummy and asks why she'd expose them so fast, Noel argues there's no need for stealth, since they already know he's a bad guy, and if he tries anything shady, they'll just cut him down. However, while they argue, a tall creep appears, greeting the hero and the saintess before introducing himself as Macmillion. Alistar can already sense the sleaze dripping off him, but something feels off. So when he asks how the creepy noble already knows their identities, Macmillion only laughs and calls them poor things. When Noel demands to know what he means by that, Macmillion steps aside and opens the door, saying he'll leave the rest to her, and a woman's voice answers from within, promising to take care of the mermaid and the humans. To everyone's shock, Pamela walks out, revealing herself as the mastermind behind everything. When Noel, still in shock, demands to know what the heck is going on, Pamela smiles and admits she did it all for her own selfish desires. She explains that Macmillion has been graciously helping her get everything she wants, then casually reveals that she's been making a fortune selling mermaids to humans. But when Pamela mentions that what she wants most now is the holy sword, Alistar actually gets excited, wondering why she didn't just say so earlier. As Pamela grows tired of talking, she suddenly calls in Helge and the two other knights to finish off the so-called hero. As the manipulated knights charges at Alistar, he tries to defend himself, but Helge is dead set on sending him to his ancestors by all means. As he attacks with fury, he blurts out that he's always been jealous of Alistar. Meanwhile, Pamela turns to Noel, declaring she'll be her opponent, and lunges forward with her pitchfork, while Noel is stunned that her own sister wants her dead. When she asks Pamela why she's doing this, Pamela says it's all because of her. She explains that when Noel was born, she had a remarkable singing voice, so beautiful that everyone said it was the most enchanting among all mermaids. Pamela admits she grew jealous, so she destroyed Noel's confidence by lying to her. When Noel was little, Pamela told her she had a frog voice, that her singing was so awful it would only embarrass her. Then she forced Noel to promise never to sing in front of anyone again. Meanwhile, as Helge keeps swinging at Alistar like a lunatic, Alistar finally snaps and asks what exactly he's jealous about. Breathing hard, Helge pauses for a moment before admitting that he is jealous of the friendship Alistar has with Marguerite. He adds that he is jealous of the way Marguerite looks at Alistar when they are together, and the fact that Marguerite has never shown him such emotions. He says he is jealous to the point that he can die, and then continues to attack Alistar with all his might. But as the fight drags on, the holy sword quickly tells Marguerite that only she can undo the charm cast on the knights. It explains that because the knights all love her, her voice alone can reach them. So as Alistar screams at Marguerite to stop the Musclehead's knights from attacking him, Marguerite decides to do what the holy sword instructed. So as she screams Helge's name, begging him to wake up, the useless simp pauses for a while to listen. So she begs him not to fall astray from who the real enemy is, but to return back to his senses. The power in her voice starts wearing off the siren hallucination clouding his head, but the jealousy in Helge's heart is too deep. So he says he will only return to his senses after taking Alistar down. But before he can make good the promise, Alistar slashes the other two worthless knights beside him, and then lands a clean punch that shuts Helge down for good. But just then, Alistar sees Noel sitting on the ground, seriously battered and bruised. So as he rushes towards her, asking what the matter is, Noel nervously shouts that she can't bring herself to fight her sister. When she says she can't do it, Alistar can't believe the rubbish the water girl is saying. But right then, someone shouts his name, and as he turns, he sees Macmillion holding a knife to Marguerite's throat. Even though Alistar couldn't care less if Marguerite was butchered like a chicken, he knows her getting hurt will put him in a difficult situation. Marguerite, noticing his reluctance, is screaming and cursing inside for Alistar to hurry and save her. But just then, Pamela demands that Alistar hand over the holy sword, promising to spare his life if he does. But as Alistar starts thinking about surrendering the sword, his sword warns him not to even think about it. Looking for another option, Alistar approaches Noel and asks for her help. He tells her that if they team up, they can surely overcome the situation. Still, the stubborn girl refuses, insisting she can't fight against her sister. When Alistar demands to know why, she simply says it's because Pamela is her sister, and no matter the cruel things she's done, she still loves her. Alistar gets frustrated by her uselessness, but after his blade advises him to cheer her up, he gets motivated and tells her that even though Pamela is her sister, she's still a bloody criminal who sold out her people, and defeating her would save everyone. When even that isn't enough to convince her, Alistar starts begging Noel, saying she has to be the one to open Pamela's eyes. He tells her she's the only one who can stop the menace, and only her voice can reach deep inside Pamela. Eventually, his words manage to reach her. As Noel agrees, she grabs her sword and starts moving toward Pamela. But Pamela, seeing Noel approach, smugly asks if she isn't going to give up. Then she pulls out her pitchfork and summons the waves of the sea to drown all her enemies. Before their eyes, a massive magical circle appears, and Alistar is stunned that Pamela can wield the same powerful water magic as her sister Noel. Even Noel can't believe her own sister would use such deadly magic on her. But remembering Alistar's words, that only she can stop Pamela, Noel pulls out her pitchfork and warns Pamela to stop the madness immediately. When Pamela refuses, the two sisters begin to clash, while Alistar faces Macmillian and orders him to let the saintess go. But Macmillian tells him to shut his stupid mouth, warning that he won't release her until Alistar hands over the sword. When Alistar reminds him that taking the life of the saintess of the country would make him a criminal, Macmillian says his plan is to murder everyone so there'll be no witnesses. But he's stunned when Noel tells him to go ahead, saying she couldn't care less since the saintess was dumb enough to let herself become a victim. Alistar tells the mofo that he can easily flatten him now that his mummy Mermaid is busy fighting Noel. But then he adds that he'll let him run away without a chase if he just releases the saintess. However, Alistar knows he's not actually going to let Macmillian escape, he's just capping. When Macmillian insists he isn't going to release Marguerite, bragging that Alistar will never attack while he still holds her hostage, Alistar says that's fine and immediately starts to charge with an evil aura. But after seeing the evil aura, Macmillian starts to panic, but Marguerite yells at the idiot, warning him that Alistar isn't bluffing and would actually end both of their worthless lives. But as Alistar gets close with his sword, he shouts for Marguerite to duck, and the second she does, he unleashes his dark aura at Macmillian, consuming him in an instant. Meanwhile, Noel and Pamela are still going at each other. But as Noel starts feeling bad for fighting her elder sister, she starts confessing to Pamela that she loves her and had always wanted to be like her. But when she realizes that Pamela's heart is as cold as your ex, she starts singing the song of the mermaids. This is a song of purification that only affects those with an evil mind. So of course it hits Alistar and Marguerite first, making them lose their dang mind before affecting Pamela. As Pamela couldn't stand the intense torture, she screams for Noel to stop singing. But in that moment, she suddenly starts transforming into a demon, shocking everyone. Will Alistar and the girls defeat this demonic Pamela? Comment Holy Sword if you're hyped to see what happens next in part 2. If you enjoyed this video, drop a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe for more awesome content. Thanks for watching, as always.